welcome to the 12-month review of my 79 series Landcruiser. And as with all the vehicles that I've owned in the past and that I currently own, I always try to do 6-month, 12-month sort of updates just to keep you guys aware of my thoughts on the vehicle as I own them and as I experience them. So the first thing we'll get out of the way is what exactly is this vehicle behind me, because there are still a lot of people, even that live in Australia, that don't quite really know what it is. Is it an old vehicle? Is it a new vehicle? Do they still make them? It's a little bit of an interesting vehicle and, can be a bit of a starting point for conversations for people that don't really know much about Toyotas. So there are also people overseas that don't really know what this vehicle is because they never got them, like people in America, for example. Very, very few 70 series are over there unless they have bought them from a specialty dealer and importer. They don't make these in America, and just like they don't get the 300 series over there. So a lot of people don't know what these are. So this is a 70 series Landcruiser. Now that is just a designation given to all of the 70 series Landcruiser in the Toyota lineup. But in there, you've got a 76 series Landcruiser, which is going to be a wagon. It's just kind of like a standard sort of a wagon. You've got a 78 series Landcruiser, which is going to be a longer wheelbase, and that is a troop carrier. And then you've got this, which is a 79 series. So this is a dual cab, which you can get in a dual cab, which is kind of like a, you've got 2 rows of seats basically, and then you've got a single cab, which gives you more tray space. So it is pretty beneficial for a lot of people out there that want to carry bigger loads. So this is a dual cab. The reason why I got this dual cab is it was the last allocated one to a dealer up at John Cole Toyota. So I got it up there. That's where I get all my vehicles from. And I got this vehicle from there because it was the last dealer allocated one, and it is an August built 2023 model, which has to be, and I don't know if anyone has a later built, this style anyway, 70 series out there, but this has to be one of the last built 70 series Landcruisers out there that is still in this original style with the bump on the bonnet, and which is very desirable. And it is something that I really, really wanted. And I fell in love with this style of Landcruiser, not the new one. So if it was going to be the new shape 2024 model, I actually wasn't very interested in getting it. It's a little bit vain, I know, but although the V8s are still fantastic and this vehicle is perfect for, it doesn't matter what styling it has on it, it is still perfect for my situation and for a lot of people out there. I really fell in love with this shape. And, as an enthusiast, full driving enthusiast and off-roading and camping enthusiast, it's very important that you drive something that you are very passionate about. And the original-ish looking style of this Landcruiser was something that really drew me to it. So I love getting in this vehicle. I love parking it up and standing back and taking a bit of a look at it, because it is, to me, the best looking Landcruiser that they make. And that is all my opinion, and that's all personal to me, just like a lot of people out there have bought the new Landcruisers in terms of how they look. Apart from that, the interiors are largely the same and drivetrains are largely the same if you can get them in a V8. So today's overview and review is still relevant for a 2024 model Landcruiser. It's just that the styling was just a little bit different, that's all. They changed a few things and they added a little bit more creature comforts. We're interested in this vehicle, which is a 2023 model. It was one of the last ones that they had in this original styling. And where we're at right now with it is that this is largely a stock vehicle. So it is a dual cab. The reason why I got the dual cab, like I said, was it was one of the last allocated dealer vehicles, and I actually wanted it in a dual cab anyway. For context, I came from a 2023 Hilux Rogue, which I made a lot of videos about, and I thoroughly enjoyed that vehicle. And it was just something that it was really tough to actually trade that vehicle in for this, because I spent a lot of time in that Hilux. I took it up to the Cape. I spent a lot of time modifying it in terms of just very basic modifications, but there were ones that I felt like I did such a minimal job of modifying it with just putting in the things that I absolutely needed and nothing that I really, just threw in there for the sake of it. I've done a little bit of that on this vehicle just because there's so many little things you can chuck on these vehicles. But the Hilux was something I built very minimally, and it was very hard to let go because I put a lot of thought and effort into it. So if you want to have a look at those videos, you can, but switching to the 79 was definitely a good choice because there is a lot less things that can go wrong with this vehicle in terms of fewer sensors. The repairing this vehicle is a lot easier as well. Upgrading it and modifying certain parts, like for example, the speakers and adding extra door storage and things like that. is easier to do on this vehicle if you are not handy, but if you have a little bit of time to learn how to do it. So for me, that was something that I really wanted to do. I love working on projects. I love filming them for you guys and showing you how I learn how to do it. So this 79 series Land Cruiser, I have come from a Hilux from, so it gives you a little bit of context. Had a Prado before that as well. So you're looking at the 2.8 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesels that I have come from, which is in the new Land Cruisers as well. They added that as an option. That's most of the ones that are going to be sold from now on. And I've come from that to a V8, which is a 4.5 litre turbo diesel. And when I tell you this thing is an absolute jackhammer when it comes to off-roading, it just eats up the off-road kilometers. So I've done 8,500 kilometers, and it's pretty safe to say that most of those have been off-road. And I've off-roaded this vehicle and I've taken it camping in various forms, everything from stock with a tray all the way to how it is now, which doesn't have any modified suspension, doesn't have a modified drivetrain. Even the wheels and tires are still factory from this model, which is a workmate. So I have added a lot of camping equipment, and as well I've added a lot of overlanding style and touring style modifications, things like some interior modifications, which we'll go through a little bit, but I have done a full walk around of that. If you want to have a look at that, you can. It's quite detailed. So I've done a lot of camping related modifications to this vehicle. So that gives you a bit of an idea where we're at. The 8,500 kilometers are mostly off-roading, going towards camps, and things like that. I do have a second, and now that you might be thinking that 8,500 kilometers is not a lot in 12 months, it isn't. I do have a second vehicle as well that I'm starting to get more content out on the channel about, which is my 2013 FJ Cruiser. So if you guys want to see more about that vehicle, make sure you go ahead and subscribe and hit the notifications, because it doesn't actually do that from default. So if you want to keep an eye out and see when that walk around video is coming out, it's going to be out in the next few weeks or so. But going back to the 79 series, I've only done about 8,500 kilometers, which is less than what I did at this time in the Hilux last year, because I have been doing off-roading kilometers in this and pretty much daily driving the FJ Cruiser. So I've managed to keep a few thousand kilometers off the 79. And we've had pretty awful weather here in Cairns over the last 12 months. So trying to get out and go camping, it just wasn't really an option. So we have missed out on quite a few camping trips as well. So this is a 5-speed manual. And I guess we'll get straight into some of the things I've got written down here on my list. Starting off with some of the issues that I found. So the first thing that I noticed when I got in this vehicle was it was very difficult to shift the 5-speed manual. First gear was very short, and it is very short. The clutch feels like it slips a lot, but it's not getting worse. It's just kind of how it is. It's just the character of it. So when you get into this vehicle and you start driving it, it feels like it's a very poorly made vehicle, but it's just kind of the characteristics of it. Like the clutch slips a little bit. First gear is really short. Fifth gear is really, really long, which again creates a little bit of a lot of shifting, especially if you're using this around town, which most people probably won't be, but if you do get stuck in traffic a little bit, you're going to be shifting a lot. So it's just one of those things that can get a bit tiring. The turning circle on this is atrocious, so if you're trying to turn and do a U-turn, for example, I need to give myself so much space. So these are all the things that I kind of initially, when I first picked up this vehicle, that I thought were big problems, and you just kind of get used to them as time goes on. If you're starting on a flat or you're starting going downhill, I'll start in second gear. If I'm going up a hill, I'm going to start in first, but it's going to be a quick shift because first gear is really, really short. So there's a lot of things that you pick up as time goes on. In terms of major issues that I have found, this is probably something that a lot of people are interested in. What are the big issues that I've had with this vehicle? So one of the main ones, which I had to take it back to the dealership for, is that it pulled viciously to the left. Every time I was on, it was even worse on off-camber roads, which most of our roads are to let water drain. But anytime you hit any sort of section that had any sort of decline going down one side, especially to the left, the vehicle just wants to go down into that ditch. So not fantastic. And I did take it back, and it was just something to do with the steering alignment, and it was something that just snuck through at the factory. So the dealership just fixed that one up for me. And that's really been the biggest issue that I had to kind of take it back to the dealership for. So the next thing that I had was the suspension was really creaky from the factory. It squeaks a lot. Even with just the factory tray on it, every time I would go over a speed bump, it would be loud enough where you could kind of, well, you could definitely hear it in the interior, but other people on the outside could hear it as well. So not a great thing to have that squeaking suspension, and unfortunately, adding more weight to it, I thought might make it quieter, but it's actually made it worse. So I will be switching up the suspension setup on this a little bit. I'm not too sure if adding an extra leaf and, kind of having a look into that leaf pack I've got in the back there will help. I've tried doing things like using lanolin and that in between the leaf packs. Helped it a little bit to begin with, but it kind of went away like after about 50 kilometers. It obviously wore off, so the squeaking came back. So adding the extra weight of the base and the canopy has not helped the squeaking, and it's made it much worse to the point where you can hear it like all the time. The squeaking just gets louder and louder. So for me, that's been an issue. I haven't heard too many other people complaining about it, so I'm not too sure if that's just an issue specific to me. Another issue that I had, and we are kind of getting the worst bits out of the way. We're eating our veggies first at this point, so we can get to the dessert. But the next thing is the interior. I find there's a lot of rattles in it. Something I wasn't really expecting. There's just not really that many interior panels in the vehicle, and there's a lot of exposed metal. So I don't really know how we're getting the rattles that we are getting. They're not bad. You actually notice it more when you're just driving on the main road. So when you're sticking to the pavement, you actually hear it more. But when you go off-road, you don't hear it because you're hearing the rocks hitting the vehicle, and it's loud in there, and you're not really paying attention to it. So kind of when things are quiet, you actually notice it more. Not a big issue, but if you don't have your speakers on and you're driving down a quiet road, not going too fast, you'll hear some strange rattles in that. So I did actually have some squeaks and rattles anyway in the Hilux, to the point where it was like there was some shinier plastics in the Hilux which rubbed together, which was really, really annoying. And that is also a very common problem in the Hilux Rogues with the more fancier dash, where it squeaks somewhere in the dashboard against the windscreen. And it seems to be that the people who've replaced the entire dashboard still have the exact same issue. So no vehicle is perfect. I didn't buy this vehicle for the plush interior, not really plush, but the plush interior that this thing has. I bought it because of the drivetrain, which we'll get to very shortly. So some information about the engine. So this engine for me pulls fine from the factory. Now I probably will end up getting it tuned after it leaves the warranty period of time, because there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work with the modifications on these vehicles and getting safe power and getting a lot of power out of them, a lot of torque out of them, and doing it pretty safely. Because I'm a guy that just wants something to work. I want to turn the key, I want it to work, and I want to get to where I'm going without any issues. So I don't want to be cranking up the boost on this and trying to get 2,000 Newton meters of torque and breaking records and getting, going viral for, seeing how much power I can get out of this thing, and then it breaking when I'm on a track. That's not for me. That's not what I'm all about here. So for me, having something that's reliable, just a little bit more power would be good, but it works fine, guys. I don't know what the big deal is all about. When I'm going, say, anything, and using fifth gear to accelerate is not great. The only time I would use that is over 100 or 110 if you're trying to pick up speed from there, because at that point, fourth gear is pretty much rung out. So if you are on a road where the speed limits are unlimited, or there is no speed limit, then you're probably using fifth to try to overtake going over 110. But if you are trying to accelerate anything under 110, you definitely are using fourth gear. If you have a hill as well, you're definitely using fourth gear at minimum to do a lot of the work. I really like it. It sounds a little bit funny. If I could have a favorite gear, it would probably be second gear, because I can take off from various points. With that second gear, I can slip the clutch a little bit, and it's not going to hurt the engine at all. It's not going to hurt the clutch at all. And I'm able to take off from there, and you can ring out second and third pretty good too. So you can get up to most of your speeds that you want to with second and third, but fifth is just a bit too tall. The other side of that is that the fuel economy on this model of vehicle, ever since they changed the fifth gearing, is that the fuel economy is fantastic. Without the canopy and all the extra stuff I've added to this vehicle, I was getting around 10 liters per 100 kilometers, which was actually better than my Hilux. So that's something that a lot of people didn't really believe at the time, but I have since proved it, because I've been driving this vehicle for 12 months, and every single time I've gotten at least 1,000 kilometers out of each filler, and there's 120 liters in this in the tank from factory, which again is an awesome bonus point. It means you don't have to fit an aftermarket fuel tank because you're going to get about 1,000 kilometers out of this model of vehicle anyway. So it's pretty interesting, saves you a little bit of cash as well. With the base and canopy that I've got on the back there, with the rooftop tent on and everything, I'm getting about 11.5 liters per 100 kilometers. So I did lose about a liter per 100 kilometers in fuel efficiency, which for me is okay because I need the stuff on there anyway. And for me, it's not that big of a deal. When I change the wheels and tires, again, it'll be interesting to see how much that's going to affect the fuel economy, which I'm assuming is going to be a lot. So I haven't changed the wheels and tires, still the factory cheese cutters on there, which people like to make fun of, but it does the job. I'm not going to be, selling these wheels for pennies on the dollar because they do the job, and I don't see the point in selling a perfectly good set of tires until I've used them fully. So the interesting thing was getting better fuel economy out of this than my Hilux doing a lot of hills and doing off-roading. Now, standard, I guess kind of like driving around town sort of situation, the Hilux will do better. But when I'm going up, say, our range here that we have, which is Coranda Range, which is a pretty steep hill that goes for a decent amount of kilometers, I found that the Hilux fuel economy would be blown out of the water. It would be 20 liters per 100 kilometers for about 30 kilometers or 20 kilometers up that range. But for this, it just doesn't seem to be worried. I can leave it in third and pretty much do the entire range in third, pretty much, as long as there's no stoppages, because they do have a lot of closures on the range at the moment. But just goes to show you that, just because something has a smaller displacement, doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be better fuel economy. And on average, I haven't done any worse in this vehicle. So that was something that I wanted to test long term, and I'm glad I was able to report that back to you guys. So talking a little bit now about what your experience is going to be like of this vehicle. So in the interior, it is loud in here. There's no getting around that. And there is no real justification that I can make for you to purchase this vehicle based on anything really that I can try to convince you on, apart from if you are going off-road all the time and it is a big part of your life, carrying loads, carrying a constant load as well on the back, doing lots of off-roading, and doing, say, water crossings and putting yourself in situations where technology would be a hindrance. Apart from, there is no way that I can justify this vehicle to a standard, I guess, 4x4 or even just a standard person that would just require a U. At that point, I'm going to be recommending a Hilux. But if you're doing a lot of the tough stuff, you got water crossings that are coming up over sensors, for example, that's when having a vehicle like this is super handy. The solid axles as well, for those people, those of you out there who are a lot smarter than I am can explain how good the solid axles are off-road and why they are preferred. So this vehicle is very tough to justify to the everyday person. So if you get into this vehicle, it's going to be loud. That's one of the points I really want to get across to you guys, is that you'd have to do sound deadening if you want to bring the noise down, and even then it doesn't make it perfect. I haven't done sound deadening in this. I can live with it at the moment. It's fine. It's loud in here. It's just how it is. Live with it. That's just how it is for me. It's not a big deal, is what I'm trying to get across. The interior, though, there are a lot of good points. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the start of the video, but this is a Workmate. So this is not the GXL. Comes in two variants, the Workmate, which is this one, and the GXL. With the Workmate, you're getting a little less chrome. You're getting vinyl seats and vinyl interior instead of cloth and carpet that you would get in the GXL. You're also missing out on things like power antenna, and you're also missing out on the power window. So this has just the old roll-up window. So that always gets a bit of a kick out of the younger folks, like my nephew, for example, and my nephews, who really enjoy getting in the vehicle and winding the windows up, because it's something they've never seen before. So it's pretty crazy. But it's an old vehicle. I'm used to old vehicles anyway in the past. So for me, a wind up window is not a big deal. People be like, why would you spend 75 grand on a vehicle that doesn't even have power windows? It's like, well, for me, it's not that big of a deal. I was used to it anyway. So it's not, like I said, it's not a big issue for me. But that might bother some people. So, but for me, again, this is something that's quite important, is that I took apart as much as I could anyway with my basic skills and did the best job I could restoring a GU Patrol, which had a 2001 GU Patrol that had power windows. And it was just problem after problem with those things. Honestly, everything from the wiring to the window regulators in them that would go on them. And then even once you fix that, sometimes the window still wouldn't go all the way up to the top. And it's just something that would happen in an off-road vehicle after using it for 25 years and racking up nearly 400,000 Ks. It's just kind of what happens. So after I kind of rebuilt as much as I could anyway, the GU Patrol, and then have since moved it on, I knew that the next vehicle I wanted to buy, if I was going to buy a vehicle that I would hang on to for a long time, has to be easy to be, or as easy as possible to be repaired. And that is this vehicle here. The roll-up windows definitely makes things a lot easier. Taking apart the assembly is a lot easier. There's no wires going into the doors. It's all manual locked. You don't get central locking in this, which you get in the GXL. So there's a lot of little things that I like about the Workmate that won't, again, be for everyone. But in my opinion, if you're going for a 79 series Landcruiser, or you're going for a Landcruiser for simplicity, this is as simple as it gets. So for me, this was actually the model that I wanted, which worked out fantastically. The interior is super easy to clean because the vinyl floors are there. I mean, there's floor mats on the vinyl floors anyway, but you know, you don't really need them because the floor is vinyl anyway. So, you know, just, I guess, helps with the wear and tear on the vinyl. If you're moving your foot back and forward that many times, especially, you know, clutching in and out and that sort of thing, it does help protect it. But giving this a clean is super easy. I have a vinyl cleaner that I use as well. I'll just spray it around every now and then, and it brings up the vinyl like brand new. It's pretty crazy, so I really do like that. You do sit very high up in the Landcruisers. If you've never sat in one, you do sit very high up, and that's something that is awesome for off-road. In my FJ, I sit like a car. You sit really low in the vehicle, and that's not great because you can't see what's around you. So even driving this thing around town isn't too bad because at least you can see what's around you. But, you know, driving this around town, it is an extremely long vehicle, so parking in center parks is impossible. So you have to look for parks that can actually fit you, and then having the turning circle is pretty awful. So if you're using this thing around town, you know, you're pretty brave, in my opinion, depending on what your cities look like. But yeah, the seating position is fantastic, and it's awesome for off-roading. It is, I guess the downside to it being high up is that you will tilt a lot more. So if you're doing off-camber stuff off-road, then you will be moving around quite a bit more. But the visibility is fantastic. And that was one of the things that I wrote down here, is that the visibility was really, really good. I did end up changing the mirrors though. The stock mirrors for me just weren't doing the job. They kept moving around at high speeds. You could tighten them up, but then it makes it more difficult to adjust on the fly. Someone walks past in the shopping center or something and they give it a knock, or you smack it on a tree or so, or a branch going past, and then you have to get out all the way around the vehicle and adjust the mirror, which is really, really annoying because these aren't powered mirrors, and on the GXL they still aren't powered. So I got these ones here, which just gives you a lot more glass. These are some Sanhema mirrors, and they give you a lot more glass. They also have like a curved glass at the bottom as well. So they're pretty much like, you know, you're going to have vision of whatever it is you want to see is going to be in those side view mirrors. So I did end up changing them out. So, but the visibility, before I got the Canopy, I could see all the way behind me. There's no reversing camera in here, but I didn't need a reversing camera because I just turned around and I could see exactly where the end of the tray was and where the park was as well. With the Canopy on there, I've got a reversing camera that I installed, so I can, again, same thing, I can see where I need to. But the visibility in these vehicles is unreal. Because they're an older style vehicle, they don't have the really thick pillars. They're really, really thin, so you can actually see a lot around you because the pillars are just so thin. And yeah, that's something that on new cars is kind of a problem, is visibility and blind spots, because the pillars are so large for safety reasons, and, you know, to keep up with new safety laws and things like that. It's damn near impossible to see some vehicles on, like, let's say roundabouts, for example, and you're going around the roundabout, people, like an entire vehicle can hide in some of those pillars. So that's a little bit of a safety issue for some of the new vehicles, but not for this one. So talking about the factory wheels and tires setup. So the factory wheel and tire on the 79 series Landcruiser is a 225/95/16. So it is a very thin and very tall tire. It is actually a 33-inch tire going, you know, in terms of height, but it is a very, very thin 33-inch tire. So most people would swap this out for a 33-inch tire, still the same in terms of diameter, but they would add a bit more meat to it. So they'd be looking more towards the 270s, 280s and beyond. So for me, the 33s actually look pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I actually got next to a GXL at the traffic lights the other day, and I was sitting quite a bit higher than them, which you don't really realize because the GXLs from memory run a 31-inch tire, or 31.2 or 31 point something. And just that extra couple inches actually made quite a big difference when we were sitting at the traffic lights. So the Workmate does get a little bit more ground clearance and just a little bit more clearance and a little bit more height, just based on the type of tire that it comes with. And it does come with a pretty good tire too. It comes with, instead of coming with the Dunlops, this actually comes with the Bridgestone Jewelers. So in terms of how these have performed, I really like the factory steel wheels. These aren't an alloy like what come on the GXL. I really like the factory wheels that come on this, and I'm hoping to get myself another pair of Jewelers as well in the near future, because they've worked for me off-road. And one of the downsides to these Jewelers though is that they do have, their wet weather performance is fantastic, but the downside to that is that rocks get stuck into them. So, you know, you can't win all the time, but you know, just something to keep in mind. But yeah, the factory wheels and tires have been fantastic. Even like the factory suspension has been great. I don't really see a need to upgrade it. I really do want to, obviously I've added a lot of weight in the back, so I will be adding some more constant weight leaves in the back, but I'm kind of not really thinking about doing a 2-inch lift because I really like the height of the vehicle as it is right now. And yeah, I think the clearance isn't going to be this vehicle's issue. The approach and departure angle isn't going to be this vehicle's issue. You're probably going to get hung up on the leaf hangers before you actually have issues with approach and departure angles. But that's just my opinion. I'm not doing the hard stuff here, guys, in this vehicle. This is a touring rig anyway. So the suspension, like I said, is surprisingly good. And point that I wrote down is that I found this actually to be better than the Hilux suspension from the factory. So a little bit of a controversial statement there, but I found the, especially the rear on the Hilux to be very, very harsh. Even with a load on it, it still bounced around a lot on the corrugations. And I'm glad the Hilux has a really good traction control system because it was needed. Actually, it's kind of odd to think because this traction control system is awful. It is terrible. It drops your power off from you, cuts your throttle. It does also. So I turn it off as soon as I can. But in the Hilux, you actually needed it because the back jumped around so much. Even with all my gear in the back, it was still jumping around on the corrugations going up to the Cape. So a little bit of a worry with the Hilux suspension, but this actually rides better than the Hilux. It's louder in here, which gives a perception that it doesn't ride as good. And the seats aren't as adjustable and things like that. So you kind of have the perception that the ride isn't as good, but it actually is, in my opinion. And you know, I did probably like 14,000 Ks in about 8 months in that Hilux. So I did a lot of kilometers in that thing. And this, when I got into this, I was pretty shocked that the suspension was better. And like I said, I've done a lot of off-road kilometers in this vehicle, you know, and they have been all off-road kilometers pretty much. So, you know, when I talk about, you know, how the vehicle is performing, I'm mostly talking about how it performs in the off-road environment. One of the things I really wanted to talk about, guys, and it's something that I mention quite a bit when I'm doing overviews and I'm doing reviews, is the ease of modification. This thing is so easy to modify. Like, you can buy that many parts for it because it's been going for such a long time and they've pretty much not changed the shapes since like the 70s or 80s when they had the 75 series Landcruiser, whenever they brought that out. This has not changed from the 75 series Landcruiser. It's like almost identical. If you put these two together, you're like, oh yeah, the bonnet's a bit different, and you know, but the doors and that all look identical. So, you know, they've, like, in terms of aftermarket companies being able to do R&D on these vehicles, it's like a dream. Like, you can get anything that you can think of, someone's probably already made for this vehicle. I am hoping though, like in the near future, to make and manufacture some of my own little parts that I've got in my mind that some people haven't created yet. So I'm looking forward to making those and sharing them with you guys to see if that's something that you'd be interested in putting in your own vehicle. So keep an eye on this space, because that's something that I really want. I spend a lot of time in this vehicle and I do a lot of thinking in this vehicle. So yeah, maybe that's something in the future that we might be able to share together, is some modifications that maybe I will be producing. Now, something I really want to talk about as well was the paint. The paint on this is not good. It uses, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't use the new style like I've got on my FJ. It doesn't use like a clear coat over the top of the paint. My basic understanding of automotive paint work is that this is a 2-pack paint, which means that it's basically just paint. Good news is you can buff it down and you won't be cutting through the clear coat. Bad news is it's laid on thin. So there are some sections on this vehicle that have not been hit, and in turn, when I say haven't been hit, they haven't been struck, they haven't been knocked, we haven't scratched them when we were doing things, and there is some rust on there. In fact, what I'll do is I might actually just take the camera over right now and just show you guys the example that I'm talking about. And you can see here on this door corner, you can see that there's a bit of rust there on the corner, right there. I haven't hit the door, I haven't done anything to this vehicle that would make that rust at all. So that is something that's a little bit of a concern, because I have ended up having to, let me just flip you guys around so I can actually see if I'm in a shot or not, but I haven't actually, hit that door corner. I haven't done anything to the vehicle that would make it rust like that. So I went out and I got some touch-up paint, because I've done like even just rock chips and stuff like that. The paint chips really easily. So I do go ahead and I use a little bit of wet dry sandpaper. I just sand it back just a little bit, and then I apply some bits and pieces of that paint. So the paint is a famously terrible component of this vehicle. So a lot of people end up just doing full resprays once the vehicle gets bad enough, and I'm not going to bother protecting this paint with a PPF, with a protection film. It's not worth it. I'm not going to spend $2,000 on protecting this paint. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to scratch this thing up as much as possible with my adventures and things like that, and then I will eventually get this thing resprayed, and we'll do a good job of it, and we'll make sure it's done properly. So moving on, the styling for this vehicle is one of the things I really want to talk about, and the styling of this vehicle is really, for me, it's awesome. Like it's what kind of makes it for me a bit of a dream car, besides the fact that the V8 is an absolute jackhammer of an engine, and it will take you anywhere you need to go, and it sounds awesome underfoot as well. It's something that, but the styling as well, guys, you pull this vehicle up, you have a look at it, and you're like, wow, this is a nice looking vehicle. Like I don't think I'll ever sell this car. And I've said that about a lot of vehicles in the past, but this is just one of those cars that I'm just like, I don't think I'll ever be able to bring myself to sell this. And I have toyed with it in the last 6 months, where people have been talking about, how the price of these are going up, but I don't think I could let this vehicle go, guys. It's just one of those cars that I just don't think I'll be able to sell. So fallen in love with it, and the big reason is just the design of it, the way it looks. And I know that I know that I won't be able to find another vehicle like this to replace it. I'd have to probably just buy another 70 series Landcruiser, and at that point, you're just throwing money away, because you sell it for whatever it is you have to buy it for, so you might as well just keep the same vehicle. And I have had that buyer's remorse in the past before, where I've sold a vehicle and I really wanted to have it back, and I would have to pay the exact same amount to get it back, and often it's not looked after as good as I looked after it. So yeah, just a couple little things there. The door seals on this vehicle, fantastic. When you try to shut the door, like, it doesn't shut. And I've mentioned this before, so I don't need to harp on about it, but you really need to slam, if all the other doors are shut, you really need to slam the door to get it to shut, because it seals in the vehicle just that good, which was something I was a little bit surprised about. And I've mentioned this before as well, but it's something I really want to drive home, was the technology on this vehicle is just, there's just nothing in it. And for me, it's fine. It works. Like, I can still use my Spotify. It just uses the Bluetooth audio. So for me, that works. If I want to use my GPS, my maps, I got my phone there. So, there's things like, I don't need any more than that. And I bought this vehicle to be simple, and I'm not going to overcomplicate it with even more technology. Even though it looks like I'm running a lot of tech in here, for those who've seen the walk around, it's not actually. It's just tapping into the existing 12 volt anyway. And it's just things like my reversing camera and having a mount, for example, for my GPS messenger. Like, it's not really adding anything more to this vehicle and adding any more complicated wiring. And it's all super simple and easy to get to, because I did it myself. So to finish up the video, we're going to be doing a little bit of an overview of some of the modifications I've done to this vehicle. So we're going to talk a little bit about the tray and canopy. We're going to be talking about the rust proofing and some of the ease of modification as well, with some examples. So we might start with that actually. So the ease of modification as an example, I did mention that earlier in the video, but You know, I'll give you an example. When I installed the UHF in this vehicle, it was so easy to install. There's these grommets in the firewall, and it makes it so easy to be able to run thin wires through, because it's got these like two little tubes, and then like a main tube that runs through the middle, which is where the main wiring harness comes into the vehicle. But on either side of that main wiring harness, which you can still push things through, there's these small little tubes, and you can push, you know, whatever wires you want through there, really. I mean, it can't be much thicker than about, you know, a few mil, but, you know, you can push those wires through. So installing things like UHFs was so easy to do. It was just, so when I'm talking about ease of modification, these vehicles are just so easy to work on. You don't need to be pushing yourself too far and maneuvering yourself so far into the vehicle to be trying to get at things. Everything's at a pretty reasonable level. You do have to do a little bit of acrobatics to try to install things, but that's like that on all vehicles. But this is the easiest vehicle I've worked on so far, and I think that says a lot about it. So there's also a lot of aftermarket accessories which you can go wild with, which I kind of have, but it's all stuff that I use anyway. So talking about, again, some of the overview things. So I've got a base and canopy that I put on this vehicle, which I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do that or not. I've never had a canopy on a vehicle before, and I've only ever used a tray with a roller cover, for example. I've used a tray with a fiberglass canopy, but I've never done a full like gull wing aluminium canopy. So for me, it was a little bit of an interesting one. And so I went and saw Pete from PSE Fabrication, and he took me through what he would do and what he has done in the past with some of the custom base and canopies that he's done, under tray boxes, things like that, and some of the extra options you can put in there, like the water tanks, for example, or water tank, sorry. It's got a 54-litre water tank in there. So he rendered that up on the screen, and once he showed me what it looked like on my car, I knew that it would be just so helpful and so handy to have, especially with the type of touring that I haven't really shown on this channel yet, but the type of touring and type of camping that we have coming up next year, where I have a little bit more time next year to be able to get out and show you guys some of the remote parts of Australia, but showing them in my way as well, which might be a little bit different to other people's. So I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to sharing my travels with you guys. But the idea of this vehicle and the idea of the base and the canopy was to try to get as much off-roading and try to get as much, remote as possible, get as far remote as possible by having the space, by having the 12 volt, which I did myself as well, but having the canopy to put it all in so you could have a nice big setup in there so I could get off-road, I can get remote for a lot longer. And the base and canopy was a big part of that and piecing that together. Having a spot to put my rooftop tent on as well was a big deal too, because that was something that I wanted to try out as a sleeping system. I've never done that before. I've used tents, I've used swags, I've done pretty much everything, but I haven't really had a rooftop tent. So having something to mount the rooftop tent onto was important, which, you know, the canopy was a big part of that too. Having the extra storage as well has been like awesome. You know, having the under tray boxes, which I was able to keep things like the compressor kit to increase the pressures in my tires or deflate my tires. It's pretty good system. I'm very happy with it. The best system I've ever had. And being able to just have the extra storage on the other side for things like leveling blocks, so that I am not sleeping, upside down like a bat in my rooftop tent. So little things like that has been fantastic. So the base and canopy has been a big part of this build, and I haven't changed the suspension to go along with it. And it does need more suspension in the back. It needs another couple of leaf packs in there just to level out that back, because it does sit a little bit low. If we're talking about other modifications done, just your basic ones, have added a bit more weight with the Toyota Genuine bar work on there as well, and that's all in the walk around if you guys want to see that. But in terms of the general modifications I've done to the vehicle, is there anything that I regret? Not at this point. I would say maybe the one thing that I probably would hold off on if you guys are going to get yourselves a new 70 Series Landcruiser is I probably would have held off on the bar work. I ordered the bar work, although I'm happy with it, don't get me wrong, I am happy with it, and it wasn't too expensive either. It was actually very reasonable. If you want to see the cost breakdown on the bar work in this vehicle, check out the initial walk around of this vehicle. But because I can't remember off the top of my head, to be honest, but yeah, the bar work's probably be something in hindsight that I probably would have left for just to begin with, and then I would have had a look at some of the aftermarket options, because there are a lot of aftermarket options out there that look better, look nicer, and that have like thicker tubing than the Toyota factory bar work. But I'm pretty happy with it. I am actually happy with the bar work, and I would do that again if I had the option, but I probably would have just waited a little bit longer just to evaluate my options, use the vehicle as well a little bit, and then kind of compare a few of the different products. So a lot of people have been asking me through Instagram, mostly through messages on there, and asking me how has the steel seal been working for my DIY rust proofing compared to, say, some of the other methods that I used in the past, which was just using Inox MX4. Both lanolin based products, and both are very safe to use around a lot of components, just obviously not like brakes and things like that. But in terms of like a DIY rust proofing, it's pretty much like one of your go-to products, as opposed to like going to a professional and getting charged like $2,000, which they of course would do a much better job. But in terms of just being able to do something yourself quickly and being able to reapply it whenever you like, you know, that's something I just wanted to try out to see how well does it work. And I also wanted to get it done quickly, because there is a lot of rust that comes on, mostly surface rust, but don't want it to get any worse, that comes on the 70 series. Just like with all new cars, they all seem to come with a lot of rust around the welds and things like that. So I wanted to make sure that I had it protected from the get-go. So I went out and I had a look, and I bought a steel seal. So I'll put that product up on the screen for you now. Listen, would I use it again? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't use it on a vehicle like this. If it was a heavy duty vehicle, like say large truck or tractor or something like that, I think it would be more appropriate for that, in my opinion. And keep in mind, this is all just my opinion. And you know, you guys can try out the products yourself first on small areas and see if it suits you a little bit better. But in my opinion, from using the Inox, which is again, like I said, a lanolin product compared to the steel seal, I feel much more comfortable using the Inox MX4 just because of the way that it goes on. It goes on a lot lighter, and you can also get it into more nooks and crannies a little bit easier because it's got a nozzle, and it's also got like the, you know, the little nozzle extension in there as well that you can stick into the frame rails. So there's just a few little things that you can do with the Inox MX4 that you can't really do as well with the steel seal, just because of how much it's a lot more of a rigid product, and it goes on a lot thicker, and it goes on a lot greasier. I was really hoping that when I put it on the vehicle that it would sit, maybe it was to do with my preparation of it, I don't know, but when I sprayed it onto the vehicle, it goes on with like quite a strong yellow. It's like a really dark yellow sort of a color, almost brown, and it's very, very thick, and it's very greasy and like hard to the touch. Like it's not like, you know, hard as in like knock knock knock. It's hard as in like it's like a firm grease. So if you stick your hair, like your head on it, and you're working under the vehicle, it'll actually keep your hair as you move off it. It will obviously come up. It's not like super sticky, but it is that really hard sort of a grease, which I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting to be more of a softer, and then it would firm up over time. But it has definitely attracted a lot of dirt and a lot of grime. On here, on the top of the suspension there, you can definitely see that it's collected a lot of grass was the first thing I noticed, and then it collected a lot of dust. But once it got to that point, it just kind of stopped collecting things, because I think it's just taken as much in the coating as it can. But when I was using the Inox MX4, which is what I just used on the FJ, again, because I used that in the past, it goes on a lot firmer. Like it's wet at first, and then you can just kind of drive around just on the road a little bit just to dry it off, you know, over time. And I just find that it doesn't have the dirt and that stick to it as much. So for those of you out there who are kind of wondering, I know it's a bit of a long story short, it's very difficult to explain these things. But the rust proofing, if you're going to do it DIY yourself, after practicing on a number of vehicles, I do at the moment, after using 2 different products, I do prefer the Inox MX4 product. So that's just my opinion, take it or leave it. It may also be to do with the way that I prepared it, and maybe what I was expecting out of the product didn't really match I guess what the product was designed for. So, you know, it's probably my fault. But anyway, at the end of the day, if I was to do this again, I'd definitely be using the Inox MX4 if you're doing your own DIY rust proofing, which are just things that, like I said, this is an overview video of things that went right, things that went wrong, things that I would or wouldn't do again. In terms of things that I wouldn't do again, definitely would do the side view mirrors again. That's awesome. The roof rack is fantastic, super easy to put on, gives me room to strap a swag on there. If I'm taking kids out on a hike or camping, I can use a roof rack. taking my nephew with me and I don't want to put a swag or, you know, anything in the canopy, I can just strap that all up on the roof rack. Just makes it super easy. I've got max tracks and that on there as well, and I've got a shower tent awning attached to it, which has been very, very handy so far. The interior for me has been unreal. I think it's got to be that and the canopy, probably my favorite modification so far. It's just that the interior pieces that I got, which is just a center console, because the one that comes factory is really, really low. The interior is just so great to use. It's quite uncomfortable just trying to keep your arm either down on the factory center console, and having just the department of the interior center console that just sits up a bit higher that you can rest your elbow and have extra storage has been really, really helpful. And yeah, just a few little bits and pieces in the interior as well, like the armrests on the door, and having new door speaker pods that I could install speakers into. That's been awesome as well. It also gives me a pocket to be able to store things like sunscreen and that in there too, which has been, again, very, very helpful, because the storage options in the 79s and in the 70 series are very limited. The roof shelf I've got in there as well just adds a little bit of extra storage for snacks and things like that when I'm out there on the road. Sanitary wipes and things like that. Just things that you don't really think about. You just tuck it all up there, sunglasses and things. It just gives you a little bit of extra room. And the 70 series Landcruisers are quite tall as well. So that's something to consider, that you do have a lot of head height. And anyone who's like you know, pretty tall, where you'd probably just run out of room is maybe in your leg space. That's probably the only space there. But I've talked to people who are a lot taller than me and said that they have no issues in the 70 series. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at your own 70 series as well. But yeah, things like the interior has been great. I got the tinting done, Jay's tint, very reasonable. I only got, I think, 4 doors done. I got like whatever the top of the range tint was, some nano thing that is very good. It keeps a lot of the heat out, and I didn't have tinting on this for the first 11 months, and it was just so hot in here. But now I can actually get in the vehicle and it's not boiling hot. Those vinyl seats are so hot when it has direct sunlight on them, but now they're not as hot because of the tinting. So that is the darkest legal tint that you can get. You can still see through it because it is legal tint, but just keep that in mind that, yeah, if you don't have tint on your 79, make sure you chuck it on. Like $80 per door is, or $85 per door, whatever it was. Make sure you get your quotes just to double check. Don't quote me, but yeah, it was definitely the best bang for buck mod that I have done so far. And one of the kind of last modifications that I did that I was pretty happy with was the rear air lockers, because those lockers just lock up straight away now, which is really, really handy. And also just a snorkel, just for a little bit of you know, I guess peace of mind, because the other snorkel system, which I've got sitting up there, is in 1,000 different pieces. So taking in water into that system is going to be a big problem if you are kind of, you know, getting yourself into bonnet height water, which I don't intend on doing, but you know, it doesn't really take much because that air box does sit pretty low. So if you do find yourself, like if you're up at the Cape, for example, a lot of those water crossings, even the dry season, can get up there. I'll put a little snapshot, a little video over how high it was when me and my mate went, pretty much in the peak of the dry season. So you know, it gets up there pretty high. In terms of the other modifications that I've done, make sure you go ahead and check out the walk around of this, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a rough idea of some of the things that I did on this vehicle that I felt were really worthwhile and that I would do again. And it really hasn't been anything that I've put on this vehicle that I thought, you know what, I probably wouldn't do that again. Before we wrap up today's video, is this vehicle for everyone? And the answer to that is no. But am I happy with it? That's the main question, isn't it? The answer to that is yes. I love how easy this thing is to modify. I love how this thing handles off-road. I love how rough and tough it is. It is an awesome car. When I get into it, it feels like an old school truck, which is what I learned to drive on when I was a teenager. I learned to drive on an old school F truck, and this is the closest thing that I can get to it. So I'm really, really happy with how this thing handles and the general driving of it. It just reminds me of my teen years. So guys, that concludes today's 12-month review of my 2023 79 Series Landcruiser. It has been a bit of a detailed one, but there's always going to be things that I have missed out. So if you want to ask me a question, put it down in the comment section, or you can send me a message on Instagram. If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm always happy for you guys to send me messages. And apart from that, I will see you guys very shortly in the next video, where shortly we will be doing a walk around of my 2013 FJ Cruiser, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys, because there's a lot of interesting things on that vehicle. It's a bit quirky, just like this one is. and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. And I'll see you very shortly in the next video. Take care.